For decades, the name Reggie Smith has stood as a shining symbol of gospel excellence, unwavering faith, and heartfelt passion. His voice, strong yet soothing, had the remarkable ability to lift the spirits of thousands and move audiences to tears. Reggie's music didn't just fill church pews on Sunday mornings. It echoed far beyond those walls, resonating in concert halls, homes, and hearts across the nation. Each note carried deep messages of hope, courage, and steadfast belief. Yet behind that inspiring voice was a quiet mystery that long intrigued his fans. They noticed his wife's occasional tender appearances by his side, the subtle smiles they exchanged, her calm but reserved demeanor. She was always there, yet never quite in the spotlight. That gentle absence only fueled people's curiosity. Who was the woman behind the man whose songs brought so much faith to the world? Why did she remain silent for so long? The questions weren't driven by gossip, but by genuine care and admiration. What was Reggie keeping so private? The truth, as the world would eventually discover, was not about scandal or secrecy. It was about love, sacrifice, and the strength to endure life's hardest storms together. Reggie's entire life was guided by faith, but his greatest source of strength wasn't only his belief in God, it was the quiet, steadfast woman standing beside him. For years, people listened to his songs about perseverance and trust in God without realizing that many were born from his own personal trials. Countless lyrics that brought comfort to others were inspired by the battles he and his wife faced together. Reggie once said, "The greatest song I'll ever sing is the life we've built together." Those words revealed everything. Their journey had been far from easy. His wife had faced serious health challenges that tested their faith and love in ways most could never imagine. Yet, through every hardship, Reggie never left her side. Their silence wasn't about secrecy, it was about protecting something sacred. They chose privacy not out of pride, but for peace. While the world speculated, they lived out their vows quietly, in sickness and in health, proving that real love doesn't need an audience. Reggie's story reminds us that sometimes the strongest relationships are the ones lived quietly, away from fame and attention, built not on words, but on faith and devotion. His journey in music began humbly. Growing up in the South, church wasn't just a Sunday ritual. It was the heartbeat of his community. The choir was the soul of every service, and even as a young boy, Reggie's voice stood out. His tone carried something rare, an emotion that reached deep into people's hearts. By his teenage years, he was leading worship, filling small churches with his powerful voice and unbreakable faith. It didn't take long for gospel producers to take notice. When Reggie recorded his first album in his early 20s, his career took off almost overnight. His voice became a cornerstone in the gospel world, blending the warmth of traditional church harmonies with the depth of personal storytelling. People didn't just hear his songs. They felt them. Despite his rising fame, Reggie remained humble and grounded in his roots. He often credited his wife for keeping him centered and focused, even though she preferred a life away from public attention. While fans celebrated his success, his personal life remained a quiet mystery. In an age where celebrities share every detail of their lives online, Reggie's silence stood out like a soft whisper amid the noise. But that silence wasn't emptiness. It was full of love, prayer, and quiet resilience. Observant fans noticed that his wife rarely attended public events, and when she did, she stayed away from the cameras. Some believed she was simply shy. Others sensed something deeper. When Reggie dedicated songs to "the bravest person I've ever known," listeners wondered who he meant. His music grew more emotional, filled with references to unseen battles and blessings earned through struggle. Something was clearly happening behind the scenes. Then, in the midst of his most successful tour, several of his concerts were suddenly canceled. The official explanation was unforeseen personal matters. Fans grew concerned, sending prayers and messages of support. Weeks later, Reggie returned, not to a grand stage, but to a small church pulpit. That performance was different, raw, intimate, and profoundly emotional. With tears streaming down his face, he dedicated a new song to his wife, once again calling her the bravest person I've ever known. In that moment, Everyone present realized they were witnessing something much deeper than music. It was a man pouring out his heart and faith. Shortly after that emotional performance, Reggie sat down for a rare and deeply personal interview. For years, he had remained silent about his private life, but this time he felt it was right to share the truth. His wife, he revealed, had been battling a long-term medical condition that required immense care, strength, and faith. From the very beginning, they had agreed to keep it private. She never wanted the spotlight, Reggie explained. She wanted the music to speak, not her struggles, and I respected that. His words revealed the depth of his love and his wife's quiet courage. She had faced her illness with grace, and Reggie had been her constant source of support through it all. That revelation changed how the world heard his music. Suddenly, every lyric about perseverance, faith, and endurance took on new meaning. The songs that once sounded inspirational now felt deeply personal, reflections of a couple who had faced unimaginable trials yet never wavered in faith. Fans across the globe responded with overwhelming compassion. Social media filled with prayers, letters, and stories from people who had faced similar pain. Many said Reggie's music had become even more powerful, a lifeline of hope during their darkest moments. Churches prayed for the couple, and fellow gospel singers praised their quiet strength and authenticity. What moved people most was how they had handled their journey, not with publicity, but with prayerful silence. In a world obsessed with sharing every emotion online, Reggie and his wife chose peace over attention. That silence spoke louder than any statement ever could. Their story reminded millions that faith doesn't have to shout and love doesn't have to be seen to be real. Reggie's journey became a beacon for those carrying hidden pain, showing that even behind the brightest voices are stories of endurance, devotion, and divine strength. After years of staying away from the spotlight, Reggie's wife eventually decided to speak, not for fame, but to express gratitude and faith. In her soft yet powerful message, she said, "Faith isn't always about being strong in public. Sometimes it's just waking up each day and choosing to trust God again." Her words touched hearts around the world. For fans, it was the missing piece of Reggie's story, the gentle voice behind his strength. She explained how her illness had changed her life, but also deepened her understanding of love and faith. She felt blessed to have a husband who stood by her through every challenge, turning their struggles into songs that gave others hope. Her message wasn't one of sorrow. It was one of peace. She wanted people to know that every trial has purpose, and that God's love shines brightest in the darkest storms. After her statement, fans said they began listening to Reggie's songs with new ears, hearing the deeper meanings hidden within, the lessons of patience, gratitude, and unconditional love. Today, when you listen to Reggie Smith's music, every lyric carries a story. The songs about endurance, thankfulness, and holding on during life's hardest moments were never just poetic words. They were real experiences, lived and endured with faith, love, and grace. The struggles and triumphs that fueled Reggie Smith's inspiration came directly from his own life with his beloved wife. That's what makes his music so powerful and deeply moving. It isn't just about rhythm, melody, or performance. It's a heartfelt testimony of love, endurance, and unwavering faith. Their relationship became more than just a marriage. It turned into a living example of what faith truly looks like when it's tested by life's toughest challenges. Reggie often said that music was never about fame or applause for him. It was about spreading hope to those who needed it most. And now, after understanding his journey, fans see that message with more clarity than ever before. His concerts feel deeply personal, his words more sincere, and even those who don't typically listen to gospel music find themselves drawn to his story. It reminds everyone that behind every stage, microphone, and spotlight, there stands a real human being, someone who faces struggles, leans on faith, and loves deeply, just like the rest of us. Reggie and his wife's story continues to inspire countless people, not because of tragedy, but because of how they faced it, with grace, unity, and unbreakable love. While fame tends to fade with time, their bond remains an enduring reminder that the greatest love stories aren't written in headlines or sung in lyrics. They're quietly lived in the background, through devotion and sacrifice. Reggie's true legacy isn't found merely in his records or awards. It's reflected in the beautiful life he built, with the woman who stood by him through every high and low. Their marriage became a reflection of faith itself, steady, peaceful, and unshaken, even in moments of pain. When Reggie once said, "The greatest song I'll ever sing is the life we've built together," he wasn't being poetic. He was speaking an eternal truth, one that has resonated far deeper than any chart-topping hit ever could. His wife's quiet strength and gentle courage gave new meaning to every note he ever sang. Together, their love became a guiding light for others walking through storms of their own, showing that even when words fail, love still speaks in silence. Today, when people hear Reggie Smith sing, they don't just hear a remarkable voice, they hear a story of faith that refused to break, of love that endured pain, and of two souls who chose peace and humility over publicity and fame. Their legacy isn't just preserved in the music they shared with the world, but in the powerful example they set of what true commitment, devotion, and faith really look like. Reggie and his wife showed that you don't need recognition, awards, or fame to live a meaningful life. Sometimes the greatest testimonies are lived quietly, in private acts of courage, in whispered prayers, and in steadfast love. That's what makes their story timeless. The mystery that once surrounded them has been replaced by admiration and respect. Their journey reminds us that love doesn't always roar. It often whispers softly in hospital rooms, in sleepless nights filled with prayer, and in the quiet strength of a promise kept. Those whispers, much like Reggie's songs, will continue to echo forever in the hearts of those who believe in the lasting power of faith, love, and music. To truly understand the depth of Reggie Smith's story, we must also look at the heart behind his music, a heart molded by faith, humility, and an unshakable belief in the healing power of song. Reggie wasn't born into wealth or stardom. His journey began in a small southern town where faith was more than a Sunday ritual. It was a way of life. The sound of church choirs, family prayers, and community hymns filled his childhood, teaching him early that music was not just sound, but a sacred connection to something divine. From a young age, Reggie believed that when he sang, he wasn't performing for people. He was praying through melody. That simple yet profound belief became the foundation of his entire career. His voice, filled with equal parts strength and tenderness, carried the message of God's grace into the hearts of those who needed it most. Whether he stood before a few people in a small church or thousands in a grand concert hall, he gave the same passion, the same energy, and the same purpose. He never chased after fame or glamour. He pursued faith and connection. As Reggie's career blossomed, his influence within the gospel community grew even stronger. He became known for his deeply emotional performances and for his ability to transform personal struggles into messages of hope and redemption. His songs weren't about perfection or worldly success. They were about perseverance, forgiveness, and trusting God even when life didn't make sense. That's what made him stand apart. While others in the industry focused on recognition and spotlight moments, Reggie remained grounded in his calling. He believed his true purpose wasn't to entertain, but to inspire. Fans often said that Reggie lived his lyrics. He didn't just sing about faith. He embodied it in every choice and every word. Behind his calm and kind smile was a man who had walked through fire, who had faced heartbreak and loss, yet still chose gratitude over bitterness and love over despair. That raw honesty made people trust him and connect with his music on a spiritual level. Throughout his decades-long career, Reggie collaborated with many of gospel's greatest voices and choirs. Yet he never allowed success to change his character. He stayed humble, always giving credit to God, his supporters, and above all, his wife. In interviews, he often spoke not of awards or achievements, but of quiet blessings, peaceful moments, shared prayers, and the love of family. He would often tell younger singers to sing from the soul, not the spotlight, reminding them that true success is measured not by charts, but by the hearts you touch. Over the years, his music evolved, but his message stayed the same. Faith is stronger than fear, and love is greater than pain. He released numerous albums that became cherished in churches and Christian homes across the nation. Songs like Through the Storm, Grace in the Waiting, and Unseen Blessings carried themes of trust, endurance, and unseen grace, messages that touched people from all walks of life. Even listeners who weren't particularly religious found comfort in his words, recognizing in them the universal story of struggle, healing, and hope. Reggie's concerts felt less like performances and more like shared worship gatherings, filled with laughter, tears, and moments of deep reflection. Many left those evenings feeling renewed, saying that his voice had reminded them of God's presence in their own lives. That was Reggie's greatest gift, transforming personal pain into shared healing. When his wife fell ill, Reggie's faith was tested like never before. It would have been easy for him to retreat, to step away from music and fame, but instead, he leaned even harder into his faith. The songs he wrote and sang during that time were filled with raw emotion and heartfelt prayer. Each lyric became a plea for strength, each performance a declaration of trust in God's plan. Even when he didn't speak of his pain publicly, his audience could feel it. They could sense the truth in every word. His suffering became their comfort. His faith became their inspiration. That deep and spiritual connection between artist and audience is rare, and it's what turned Reggie from a talented performer into a spiritual guide for many. Today, Reggie Smith stands not just as a celebrated gospel singer, but as a living symbol of perseverance, love, and grace. His career spans decades, yet his spirit remains as humble as the small-town boy who once sang in church pews. He continues to perform, teach, and uplift others, reminding the world that music isn't about fame. It's about faith, healing, and love. Reggie's legacy reaches far beyond his awards or chart rankings. It lives in the countless lives he's touched, the hearts he's lifted, and the hope he's restored. When people talk about Reggie Smith today, they don't just talk about his voice, they talk about his heart. They talk about how one man, through his music and his unwavering faith, proved that even in silence, love sings the loudest and most eternal song of all.